Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning and welcome to a Thursday edition of the program. It's PodUp Matthews in the morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. I want to thank David Steele, used to be the voice of the Gators, now works for the Orlando Magic, for introducing our program today. We'll have Brent Beaird here in just a second, our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter. And then we'll have Mike Ridaught do a little high school sports and the Baker Sporting Goods High School Roundup tonight. A couple games in college football, the Miami Hurricanes and the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats. And then Navy and Memphis will be your televised game. And in the NFL, you get the Vikings and the Eagles. That'll be a good one for sure. Let's go to our Titan MRO hotline, and we're joined by our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter, Brent Beaird. Good morning, Brent. How you doing?
Hey, Shane. If you've got the ACC network, the Miami game is actually on that one, too. So, and I know some don't, some do, but that's worth mentioning. And I mean, the reality is, if you haven't seen Miami yet, that would give you a chance to be able to do that. And Navy and Memphis has got a pretty good team too this year. Shane, I'll be real brief about this, but I wanted to mention it because we've got a lot of folks who need to do this. I went in last week for my 6-month dermatology checkup, and they found on my jawline after a biopsy something I needed to get in to take care of. So I went yesterday, and there was some precancerous stuff there that needed to be taken out. They took a couple of it's a Moose or Mose. I forgot what the name of it is, but it didn't. They numb you. They to take a couple of cuts, and usually by the second or third one, or even hopefully the first, they get it out. So they said they got everything and stitched me back up. I've got a bandage on. But especially as we think about what happened to Jimmy Buffett recently, that's just something. I think guys, particularly being outside, I think about football players, coaches, and so forth, that they need to be able to take care of that. So just want to mention that briefly. Doing fine. It was taken care of, but if this would encourage a few folks to go and get checked out and they find it early, that's all that matters.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So we'll be thinking about you, Brent, for sure. Good thing they caught it. We got a couple of Facebook Lives where we jump into it right here. Andy asked on Facebook Live, brought to you by Melton Law. Shane, do you think the Gators win Saturday if Mertz outplays Milton? I think too many people get caught up in the quarterbacks going at it. I still think the key to this game is the Gator front seven controlling the Tennessee run game, because that's what they want to do. I think Graham's going to play really well, though. I really do. I think he's a better quarterback than Joe Milton. Now, from the measurables, he's not. But again, that ain't got nothing to do with playing quarterback.
No.
Here's a text from John. He says, how many fans you think would be at Miami and Bethune-Cookman? I'd go 9,000 would be my guess, if that. I don't think there'll be a lot of people there for that game tonight. All right, Brent, what jumped out to you over the weekend of last week's games?
Well, obviously the Texas win over Alabama got a lot of attention, to say the least. I think also Auburn coming back and being able to win at Cal was important for people who stayed up and watched the end of it. The Gators look good. I understand the competition, but they still were able to play well. Mississippi State coming back and getting out a win over Arizona also, I think, was very important. Kentucky's struggling. They're winning, but they're struggling. So, just off the top of my head, probably those obviously kind of reached out to. And I know there's some non-conference games that were interesting too. Ole Miss Tulane, I was impressed with what Ole Miss was able to do. The Miami win, frankly, shocked me over A&M. I thought A&M would control the line of scrimmage in that game. They did not. So kudos for the Canes and a big win for them. To look, A&M may be 8-4, 7-5 again, but that still was a nice win for them at that point. And Florida State, obviously undefeated, they go to Boston College, and they will have that northeast weather to deal with, rain and gusty winds of about 25 to 30 constantly during the game. I know you've told us before that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, if you're a quarterback, I believe I remember you saying, Shane, it's not so much rain that's a problem, it's more the wind. Did I hear you right with that?
Yeah, wind's terrible. So if it's bad weather, I mean, Boston College has no chance. They're terrible.
Right.
They should have lost to Holy Cross.
Mm-hmm.
Florida State will win that game, so I don't know how bad the weather's going to be, but that could affect it. Speaking of weather, Zach on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing, says game day's getting close. Rain's going to come into play Saturday. Asking, I didn't even know it was supposed to rain. I just looked. It says 70%, but you never know. In Gainesville, a thunderstorm may come through, but I'm not real concerned about it. Brent, the top 25 came out. Anything surprise you at all?
Well, again, even though it's early, you still pay attention a little bit to that. I mean, Florida State certainly is moving up to number 3. Georgia, Michigan, very consistent with that. Bama falls to 10. Tennessee just right outside the top. And now Utah is staying around 12. So they've been very consistent. So again, Gator fans need to understand how good Utah is. Now they've got some interesting games coming up over the next few weeks. Oregon State, who virtually has no home. I mean, they're going to get picked up by, I think, the Mountain West is at 16. Colorado is at 18, so they are squarely in the top 20, moving up somewhat too. And how about Duke at 21? Quite a job that Elko has done there.
Yeah, we got a text for you, Brent, on the Titan More text line from Bob. He says, Brent, can you explain to us what's going on with the kid at North Carolina and why Mac Brown's so upset that he's ineligible?
Well, you've got two guys here that are involved. One is a transfer that was trying to go to Florida State or at least play, and the other one is at North Carolina. Now, I believe both these guys are like multiple transfers. So, but I think what's happening here is the NCAA is trying to get relevant again, and they're trying to show a little bit of teeth. People have called them a toothless tiger for several decades now. So they're trying, I think, to kind of revive their image, and we're going to revive our image by being tough on a couple of kids. And to these schools' credit, they have not given up. I mean, they've had congressmen, they have had board meetings that they have, I think both Florida State and North Carolina have done all they can to get these guys eligible to play. I don't think they'll do this because you really can't take this chance, but I saw a tweet yesterday that said North Carolina ought to go ahead and play this guy and whether the NCAA likes it or not, just force their hand. I mean, you could do that, but you have no idea how they would react, and if they react the wrong way and you have to forfeit games, that's a problem. So I think, and really these kids haven't done anything. I think all they want to do is play at these schools, and what was going the one direction with basically the players getting everything they wanted as far as transfers and so forth, but the NCAA have dug their heels in for both of these guys at UNC and Florida State, and I think at some point that will also come up to bite them, and I think it already has. Yeah. So that's one of those things that we're kind of waiting on to hear to see how that's going to affect a lot of these schools. So that's one thing that would be very interesting to see. And listen, another thing that's happened that I think is very interesting is Brent McMurphy works for the Action Network headquarters, and he has done a survey with coaches, and these coaches have said they do not like this new clock rule. 133 have responded, and Steve Shaw, the national coordinator of officials, said the rule could be reviewed and changed back in 2024. Anything is possible. So I know Shane has expressed a lot of displeasure about this rule, along with a lot of other folks. So, and again, and obviously the rule we're talking about is the clock running as soon as you make first down, and as we talked last week, somebody's measured the difference in last year and this year, and it was about 4 plays. So we've had all kinds of committee meetings and all kinds of things that have happened to basically save us 4 plays. That's just amazing to me.
Yep. Brent, I'm back. There's a lot of construction going on around me, so I don't know what's going on with the internet. But we had a couple of texts here, Brent, I want to get to before we jump around the league. Sure. Let me pull them up on the Titan Lamar text line. First of all, this is from SR from the 941. He says, biggest game yet for Billy and a must win. Stop the run and we win. I agree with that. This one from a 904 says the NCAA needs to go away. Another 904 text on the Titan Lamar text line. Good morning, Brent. Gamer game stood out to you last weekend. Good to see you Friday night. This is Daryl. Brent, was there a player or players that really caught your eye last weekend?
It was. I try to go to a high school game every Friday night unless I go out of town to cover a college game, and I was at the Orange Park and Clay game. It was great to see Daryl and his family there. Super caller and texter that we've known for years in this area. Probably not right now because there are a lot of young kids on both schools, particularly Clay High. But I will be watching both of them very closely over the next few weeks, and we'll have a little bit more of a report. But nothing particularly stood out. It was a wild game back and forth, but it was great to see Daryl.
All right, let's jump in the SEC. Let's start with Alabama. They're traveling down to Tampa, going to play the Bulls. Brent, your twin brother does sports talk radio up in North Alabama. Is everybody ready to fire Nick Saban?
Well, yeah. I mean, you've got a little bit of that. He's forgotten how to coach and things of that nature. So let me say real quick, why people are going to ask, why is Alabama in Tampa? Well, this is a 2-for-1 deal. USF plays in Tuscaloosa in 24 and 26. By the way, USF has had 5 coaches in a decade. That is a lot. So anybody who wants to get rid of Billy Napier right now, they need to pay attention to that. because hiring and firing a coach, as Shane has said, every 2 years gets you nowhere. By the way, the USF coach is Alex Golish. If that name sounds familiar, he was the Tennessee offensive coordinator last year and the year before that. So, look, USF's not real good. This is probably what Bama needs right now. And I'll be brief about this, but Texas deserves a lot of credit. They had the better line of scrimmage, and that's how they won the game. The other way they won the game was that Jalen Milroe was not very good. And that's just being very honest. He threw 2 horrible interceptions, and there are just times that where he is not ready to play quarterback. I mean, he's got a good long ball, and the kid actually has improved. Saban actually admitted that he thought about changing quarterbacks during the game, but then Milroe threw a touchdown pass, and he decided against it. They will have some changes in the offensive line for USF. They will play multiple quarterbacks in this game too, and this is an important game for Alabama to get some things straight, because next week Ole Miss comes in, and then the following week Mississippi State comes in. So they jump into the to the conference schedule, and there's a lot of things they've just got to get straight. So that's where they are right now, and they've also start communicating better in the secondary. So so it was a big win for Texas and a difficult loss for Alabama.
Yeah, and in Alabama, I try to tell people all their goals are still right in front of them. I mean, they can run the table. They can run the table, win the SEC, win the West, and go to the 14 playoff. However, they ain't doing it with Jalen Milroe at quarterback. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Arkansas, BYU, interesting out-of-conference matchup for the Hogs.
Yeah, it is. Yes. Rocket Sanders, who may be the best running back in the league, will not play in the game, is what we understand. There's a knee situation there. Now, Arkansas obviously is playing well. And by the way, they played BYU last year. So this is the return game. BYU is a pretty decent team, too. They get their wide receiver, Cody Epps, is coming back for them also. The reason Arkansas is playing well, they have not allowed any sacks so far, which is a real plus for them, and they have not committed any turnovers. Arkansas is one of maybe about 6 teams, and Texas is another one that has not committed a turnover yet this season. So, by the way, Kenan Slovis is at BYU. That's a familiar name to people. He's bounced around a little bit, but KJ Jefferson's still doing well at quarterback, but they need to get Rocket back, don't they, Shane? Because SEC schedule starting very soon.
Yeah, for sure. He's a really good player, and hopefully that knee injury is not too severe. Auburn came from behind to defeat Cal. Auburn has not looked great to me in the 2 games they've played. They got Samford rolling in, which Samford is a really good program, but Kerwin Bell and the Catamounts of Western Carolina put it on them last week. This could be a dicey game for Auburn, but I'm sure they'll win a close one.
Yeah, I agree with that. They'll start 3-0, but with their schedule coming up in the SEC, they could be 3-4 in about a month. The Auburn offense really struggling against Cal, and I give Cal a lot of credit. Cal is frankly a pretty good football team. Could have won that game. That they missed 3 field goals, but Auburn, to their credit, were able to come back in the fourth quarter and win. Eugene Asante, one of the Auburn's linebackers, had a nice game, had a sack, a couple of tackles for losses, etc. But Shane is right. If people have followed Samford, they can move the ball up and down the field. And Western Carolina beat them 30-7, and they've got a pretty good quarterback in Michael Hayes, who they like. But I think Auburn will win the game and get better in this one. But there's a lot of difficult games around the corner.
Yeah, the big one Saturday night in Gainesville. The Vols are rolling in. Vols hadn't had much success in all the years of playing football in Gainesville for some reason. Not that has any bearing on game Saturday night. What can you tell us about this game?
Well, and I agree with you. That's a fun stat to throw around. But, I mean, and Tennessee's won 5 times in Gainesville and 21 times. And 2 of those were in 1953 and 1955. I think it's great that Kingsley comes back. By the way, I've had a chance to talk to 2 straight Gator clubs, Putnam County Gator Club and the Clay County Gator Club, this past Tuesday night, and they remain behind the program, and they understand that it's going to take some time, and that's going to be very important. Now, I think the reality, and I agree with what people have said so far, Tennessee has ran the ball really well, and I think that's the thing that folks have got to watch out for with them. And Cooper Mays, their center, should play. He's really important in that offensive line, and so his coming back will help them. But Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, and Dylan Sampson is the what makes that offense go. Joe Milton, frankly, just not played well, and I heard yesterday from a Tennessee beat writer who said that they were the Tennessee beat writers were shocked how poorly Tennessee played last week versus Austin Peay. They were hoping to get their backup quarterback Nico. I think that's Lama Leva. We'll learn soon enough. Get him a little action, but they really weren't comfortable enough in the game to be able to do it. So Tennessee's defense is better. They're among the leaders in sacks and tackles for loss, which is an improvement over last year. But I will say, and I agree with you, and I told the club the other night, Florida is very capable of being able to win this game. So that's going to be obviously a pivotal game for both these teams.
Radware's a family-owned business that prides itself in excellent customer service while providing quality and affordable promotional products and customized apparel. Speaking with Brent Beaird on the Titan Lamar hotline, let's get to a couple of texts real quick before we move on the Titan Lamar text line. Dave in Macon, Georgia says, keys to the Gator success Saturday night: O-line performance, Napier play calling, Mertz quick and accurate passing to wide receivers, pressure on Joe Milton to force 2 turnovers. My thoughts. Yeah, I agree with that. I just think we got to let Graham Mertz go play. Yeah. Y'all know I'm a big fan. I think he's a really good player. Let's get one more text here. This is Chris from Mayaka. He says, Shane, did you see the Cavassier smoke from Kentucky is now a 3rd-string running back at Colorado now? Thought he was a decent. I did not know that. Yeah, Colorado's going to run into some buzzsaws here coming up.
They are.
Great story. They're a great story. Deion's done a great job. His kid is the reason why they're winning games. Let's be honest. His kid is an outstanding quarterback. Really, really good. All right, let's go to the 3:30 game, the Dogs and the Gamecocks. I don't know what to make of this game. I don't know if South Carolina can protect Spencer Rattler, but I think Spencer Rattler can make some plays through the air. Georgia has sputtered getting out of the gate in most of these games, Brent.
Georgia's done really poor, particularly in the first quarter. That's been a problem. Now, they have had some guys step up. Mekhi Muse is one of those guys. He had a 69-yard punt return for a touchdown and a 47-yard kickoff return to midfield. So he has stepped up. Ladd McConkey has a back injury, and they played him very little. And A.D. Mitchell, as you know, is going to Texas, so they miss him too. Dylan Bell at running back has stepped up. Here's the big problem for South Carolina in this game. Their offensive line has been poor. They allowed 9 sacks. That's a season's worth against North Carolina. So that, but as Shane said, Spencer Rattler, when he's got a clean pocket, is very good at times. Their ground game at South Carolina is not very good. Last week they averaged 2.8 per carry. 60-yard run was the longest one. So, look, Georgia still has the better roster. They will win the game. But, yes, this is the SEC's first CBS game of the season. It kind of reminded me of when CBS used to have the Open Tennis from New York in the first 2 weeks, and then folks will remember on the third weekend of September was usually Florida, Tennessee.
Yep, for sure. One of the most intriguing matchups in my mind that a lot of people aren't talking about, LSU playing in Stark Vegas against the Dogs. They're 2-0, playing really good defense. This could be, if LSU could lose this game, I don't think they will easily lose this game.
State is very good, and State's a veteran team, particularly in the line of scrimmage. And LSU's really struggled in getting Brian Kelly to get Harold Perkins involved. They've been too complex in their scheme with Perkins. And Harold Perkins, we saw this against Florida State too, is one of the best linebackers anywhere. So they've got to get him going in this game. State's defense forced 5 turnovers against Arizona. So Zach Arnett, as head coach and former defense coordinator, really has them going at this point. Here's the oddity, the true oddity about Mississippi State this year. They are 119th in the nation in pass attempts. Isn't that odd, Shane? With the run and shoot, with the air raid, that was what I want to say. They led the nation basically in pass attempts. Now they don't run the air raid, so Will Rogers is throwing a lot less under Kevin Barbay's offense. So, no, I'm with you. Now, LSU's won 4 or 5 in the series, but this will be one of the better, more interesting games of Saturday for the SEC.
For sure. Another very out-of-conference game. Kansas State is like 15th in America. We'll be playing the Missouri Tigers. And I hate to say it, I don't think Missouri can beat K-State.
I don't think Missouri has enough offense to beat K-State is the problem. Now, Eli Drinkwith gave up calling plays this year, and they've still got Brady Cook, and they've also got Luther Burden, who by far is their best player. But that they've got to be able to find a way to get this offense going, because it has been dreadful at times, frankly. And Luther Burden is a guy worth watching as a wide receiver. He does a really good job for them. But Shane, I'm with you. I think Kansas State wins this game. It'd be a huge win for Missouri if they could do it. It's a home game for them. So anyway, that's one I hope that folks are able to watch a little bit. I think they'll be very surprised with Kansas State, and to see if Missouri and Brady Cook can step up a little bit.
So the old cliche trap game. Could this be a trap game for the Ole Miss Rebels? They host Georgia Tech. It's not the old Georgia Tech. They have Haynes King, the transfer from A&M. They're a pretty good football team now. Ole Miss has Alabama on deck, I believe, next week.
Yes.
So, I think Ole Miss is going to win it, but I think Georgia Tech's going to give them fits.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with that. Haynes King had a 313-yard passing day against Louisville and 290-yard 4 touchdowns in the win over South Carolina State. So Tech is looking much better. Frankly, now Ole Miss had a strong win at the end in the fourth quarter over Tulane. Tulane jumped out 17-10. And look, Tulane's a really good football team. So this was a nice win for them. Dayton Wade stepped up. Centurion Perkins for Ole Miss. Also, Trey Harris, one of Ole Miss's better receivers, got hurt in the game. We're not sure how soon he will be back. That's going to be important too. And the Ole Miss defense is playing a bit better too. So keep that in mind as Ole Miss looks toward Tuscaloosa next week.
Yes, for sure. We talked about FSU a little bit because I wanted to jump down to them. They're going to be playing at Boston College. I mean, well, let me get to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's playing at UNLV, which is an intriguing game. They're going all the way out to Vegas. They played okay at times last week against, but they have a chance to get their third win here. Do you think they beat the Running Rebels?
Yeah, I think that's very possible. AJ Swan has played well mostly this year. So I think that's been impressive. UNLV's already played Michigan. J.J. McCarthy was 22 of 25, so maybe Swan can take advantage of the UNLV defense. By the way, UNLV head coach Barry Odom, how about that, Shane? So if folks are wondering where he is, that is what's going on. So Vandy starting 3-1 would be impressive for them. Yes.
Yeah. We had a YouTube comment earlier brought to you by Quality Plumbing, and we're going to talk about A&M. They're hosting Terry Bowden and Louisiana Monroe. People want to know, do you think Jimbo's on the hot seat?
Oh, yeah. That still doesn't mean he's going to get fired. His buyout, by the way, if folks are interested, is $78 million still. And look, that buyout's going down. So, but that's still a lot of money. But the reality is, he may not survive if they have another 8-4, 7-5, which I think is where they're going. And oh, by the way, you lose to Miami, you get back home, and then over the weekend, Shamir Turner, the team's leading sack leader, is arrested for reckless driving. So, and Texas A&M has lost 9 of the last 12 games, Shane, against Power 5 teams. So wow. I think they'll get better and improve over ULM. But the reality of it is they're struggling. Their line of scrimmage is a lot softer than what we thought it would be. They're not running the ball well. Miami carved them up at times. They haven't done well on third down. So there are a lot of issues. But look, the thing is, even though it's $78 million, obviously they've got a lot of oil money there, and you've got people who are willing to do something about that. But they wanted to give the Bobby Petrino situation a chance to see how that would affect the team, and they still lost the game in Coral Gables.
Yeah, they $78 million is not a whole lot of money to the Aggies.
Yeah, you're right. True.
I really firmly believe if they do not win the West, I think he's gone, Brent. That's just my gut feeling.
Yeah,
because
I understand that.
I didn't think there was any way they would lose to Miami. No way. And so I think they make a move if they do not win the West this year. Any nuggets before we get you out of here, Brent?
Yeah, you mentioned Florida State. They've scored at least 35 points in 8 straight games. I don't care who you are. That's a good. Johnny Wilson's dropped some passes. They're a little concerned about that. But I mean, FSU's playing well. Remember, the game at Clemson is around the corner, so that is where FSU's got to go. That they've got to exorcise some demons with Clemson. They have not beat Clemson since 2014, so it's going to be very interesting for that to happen. One more, Kentucky, Liam Cohen had some kind of a medical procedure or medical episode last Sunday. He is supposed to be back with the team. We're not sure what happened there. but they're winning, but they're struggling. People thought that Cohen coming back, Devin Leary at quarterback, and so forth, that they were just be really humming at this point. But Shane, as you know, when you've got change at quarterback and coordinator, it just takes a while to get it going, and that's kind of where Kentucky is.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Brent, great stuff as always, my man. Get well. We're thinking about you, and we'll talk to you next week.
Look forward to it, buddy. Take care.
That's Brent Beaird, our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter, joining us on the Titan More Hotline. Take a quick time out. Come back. We're going to talk a little high school sports with Mike Ridaught from the PrepZone.com and Main Street Daily News. Watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the morning.
We want to take this moment to thank our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Meldon Law, the only official injury and accident law attorneys of the Florida Gators. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. QC Kinetics, live pain-free with QC Kinetics. Campus USA, put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. Dave & Buster's, eat, drink, play, watch. Our gridiron sponsors are Auto ER, UF Bookstores, Silverback Concrete, Ruse Ogre State Farm Insurance, Radware, F45, Quality Plumbing. Our touchdown sponsors are Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Gator Bait Media, Okido America, Style Cuts, Ironwood Golf Course, Big Mills Cheesesteak, McDonald's of Gainesville, 84 Lumber, Dowling Signs, Baker Sporting Goods, Silver Q Billiards and Sports Bar. If you're interested in promoting your business on the show, call Freddie at 352-284-3733. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to follow us and support the businesses that support us.
Attention all Gator fans, Meldon Law is giving away a chance to experience the Florida-Georgia game like never before. 2-night stay at the Hilton on the River, dinner at Ruth Chris Steakhouse, 2 premium tickets to the game, and a football signed by Coach Billy Napier, and much more. Go to the Meldon Law Facebook page and look for the VIP experience for 2. Good luck and go Gators!
Welcome back to the Crime Prevention Security System Studios, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Ruse Ogre State Farm Office is a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help.
Attention all Gator fans, Meldon Law is
family. Visit ogreinsurance.com. Give them a call, 352-240-1779. Real quick before we get to Mike Ridaught, Gator Josh on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing, says, Brent, is the D-line decommit from Florida, big deal. Kid from Georgia, do you know why he decommitted? I don't know. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, that's going to happen. Kids decommit all the time. I think he's a 3-star. Let's go to the Titan MR hotline, and we're joined by a guy that does a tremendous job covering high school sports for the Baker Sporting Goods High School Roundup. It's Mike Ridaught from the PrepZone.com and Main Street Daily News. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good, Shane. And what's the saying? Build it and they will come. You know, I don't worry about that recruiting stuff too much. I think that eventually that stuff kind of, it works itself out.
Yep, no doubt about it. Mike, let's start with volleyball.
Okay.
I went and watched the Purple Hurricanes and the Lady Raiders last night at Santa Fe game. A couple buddies of mine have girls on both teams. Very competitive first 2 sets. Santa Fe is going to be perfectly fine, in my opinion, in their classification. But GHS has a chance to maybe win it all.
I wrote about that, ironically, on Friday. And I mentioned, that every now and then a team will come around and you're like, wow, this team has a chance to be pretty special. And I wrote that article after they swept Buchholz. And they've got 3 Division I commits on the team. But I was really impressed with Taylor. I don't know what you thought about her last night, but, she had, I think, 80 kills going into the week. She had 43 at the Nike Tournament of Champions the previous weekend. They saw some really good competition. And then they go and lose 5 sets at Ponte Vedra right after I wrote my article, and I was worried that I gave them the kiss of death. So it was nice to see them bounce back and beat Santa Fe. It had been a while since they had beaten the Raiders. I agree with you. I think Santa Fe is going to be okay in their classification. But for Gainesville, I do like their chances, but it really does start with Taylor. I mean, when you look at basketball, I've asked coaches, what does it take to win a basketball state championship? And I've been told you got to have a teen wolf. Well, that's their teen wolf, this Gainesville volleyball team, Taylor. I don't know how she looked last night, but she is a phenomenal player. She's going to USC, and some of her returns across the net, I mean, you can't return them. So I think if they continue to improve, I think GHS has a chance to have a really special year this year.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of high school volleyball the last 4 or 5 years due to buddies that have girls playing, and she's clearly the best I've ever seen.
I agree. And that says a lot, too, because Jalen Stout of Santa Fe was back-to-back Miss Volleyball. But in my opinion, Steeler's a much better player than Stout, at least a more dominant player.
Yeah, and I don't know enough about the game of volleyball, but I would set her on every possession because you cannot, you can't stop her. I would just say, hey, the rest of y'all may get a few sets here and there, but we're going to feature her the entire match, and that's what I would do, especially when it playoff time. So,
quickly in that Buchholz match, Shane, it wasn't so much that she led anybody with 20 kills. She had a 708 hitting percentage, so she's very accurate too. And then you mix in Mimi Davis, who's a Mercer University commit, Charlotte Gravely, who's going to Columbia. They've got some players on this team. I think they're going to make a run.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Anybody else? And I think Santa Fe is going to make a run too in their classification. Anybody else you want to talk volleyball before we move on to football?
Well, last night I had the Oak Hall volleyball team on my show, the Prep Zone Sports Show. It's archived at theprepzone.com. But Oak Hall right now, Shane, they're 8-0. Last year they advanced to the region final in 2A Region 1. It was a 5-set loss to a team from Jacksonville. I think they've got a chance to get to the state semifinals because they had no seniors on that team last year. The FHSA rankings just came out. First rankings of the year for volleyball, and they are 3rd in Class 2A. Perry McDonald thinks that might be a little bit too high. They've got a tournament coming up this weekend. In fact, there are a lot of local teams that are playing in tournaments this weekend. Bell's hosting the Lady Bulldog Invitational. Newberry and several teams are going to go up to Jacksonville for a tournament. But yeah, I say keep your eyes on Oak Hall. I think they've got a chance for a special year this year too.
All right, real quick, we got a text on the Titan Lamar text line from Brett in Jacksonville. He says, Shane, the drunkenness at the swamp has gotten really bad, and there's nothing being done about it. It's the worst I've ever seen it. I'm not just talking about students. What do you think or been hearing? Hadn't heard anything, Brett. I'm in a little hole-in-the-wall booth the entire game. So haven't. All right.
And hadn't that been going on for years anyway?
Yeah, no doubt. Let's talk a little high school football. Let's start with the smaller classifications first. Obviously, Hawthorne is the premier team. Obviously, you got Williston and Union County, a couple others. But tell us about the I guess, is it 1R? Are they the 1R team?
1R. 1R.
I'm learning. I'm learning.
Yeah. And you mentioned Hawthorne. They're off to a 3-0 start. They beat Terry Parker out of Jacksonville this past week, 46-6. And we recognized their wide receiver, Alvin Isaac, as our athlete of the week. He had 4 touchdowns in the win, including he had 3 receiving touchdowns. He also had an 80-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. He's a USF commit. Now, he's a transfer from the Villages. They have hit the transfer portal. Now, they do have a couple players back from last year, but they did lose a lot of talent. But Caleb Rollerson, their second leading receiver, he's a transfer from North Marion. Their leading tackler, Andrew Zock, who's averaging 12.7 tackles per game, he is a North Marion transfer. So they've got some key players in the transfer portal. They will get a tough test this week. And she actually picked against them this week. We'll see. But South Sumter out of Bushnell is their opponent this week. South Sumter last year advanced to the Class 2S Region 3 final. They lost to eventual state champion Cocoa. They're off to a 3-0 start. think it'll be a great game. That's our audio game of the week at MainStreetDailyNews.com. So a tough test for Hawthorne this week. Kudos to Robbie Pruitt at Williston, because they lost Kyrie Edwards, their running back, who had over 1,000 yards rushing last year. They lost him to graduation. Shuby Coleman has been kind of steady for them. He's only thrown it about 10 times a game. They run the football. We know that's their bread and butter. They as a team, they average right at 8 yards per carry. But Shuby's, 63% of his passes complete. He hasn't thrown an interception, so he's been steady Eddie there at the QB position. They are 3-0, but I think the impressive thing about them is they beat a Land O'Lakes team, which is a Class 4S team that was undefeated. So a big win for Robbie Pruitt and Williston. I think they've got a chance to have a special year. Also in that classification, Union County, they've been banged up a little bit, but they still went on the road, and they went to Walton, a long trip there, 4.5-hour drive, and actually it was a 2 overtime game. They came home with a loss, but that was their first loss of the year. I think Union County will be there in the end. They actually go to Hawthorne. Looking forward to that rematch this year. So that's some of your top teams in that smaller classification, that Class 1R. But another small school, how about PK Young? Willie Jackson, 2-0 right now. They rallied from a 14-0 deficit to win their second game, but they've got to go to Union County this week. I think they get their first L.
I would agree with that. All right, so down in Ocala, obviously Trinity Catholic and Vanguard are the premier teams. I think both of them have played extremely hard schedules to this point. I was talking to somebody. Trinity Catholic could probably go like 3-7 and probably win the state championship with their schedule.
Absolutely, and they lost last week. But again, like you said, it's a schedule that's loaded. Those are the types of games that will not only help you get ready for the playoffs, but because of the way that they factor in, seedings and so forth, it's going to put them in the postseason. They've also had a couple of games, I think, that were canceled because of weather. No, they actually had their first game canceled because of COVID, believe it or not. But they beat Gainesville High School last week. No surprise, it might be a long year for GHS and Ian Scott. But they do have Carrollwood Day. That's going to be a tough one on Friday. They've got to go to Jacksonville Reign, Shane. I grew up in Jacksonville. Reigns has always had a phenomenal program, football program. They've got Florida High on the schedule, St. Xavier out of Cincinnati, Ohio. They got Buchholz. They'll play PK Young. I mean, they do play a tough schedule this year. And then you mentioned Vanguard. The interesting thing about Vanguard, they trailed Denellen 21-0. Shane, they came back and won the game 28-21. So they're now 3-0. They will get a test this week, maybe. Leesburg's 3-0. We'll find out maybe a little bit more about each team, but we'll really find out next week because Vanguard will travel to Buchholz next Friday night. I'm looking forward to that one as well because that one came down to a field goal in the last seconds of the game last year in Ocala.
Yep. Speaking of Buchholz, Andy has a question for you. I'm going to answer it as well. He says, Mike, in your opinion, is Buchholz Miles Graham a better linebacker or running back, and could he play running back for the Gators? He's a linebacker.
He is a linebacker, but at the high school level, he's so big, Shane.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's like a bowling ball back there. Yeah,
you're exactly right.
At the high school level, and they needed him last week because you remember last week we were talking about Quentin Cutler. He's a guy that ran for 1,000 yards for him last year. He had a 38-yard touchdown run on their first offensive series, but he got injured. And then Miles Graham came in, and he kind of took over that running back role. He had a 15-yard touchdown run. Yes, he at the next level will be a linebacker, but at the high school level, boy, he's really tough to bring down. You could see, from the press box, he passes the eye test. And Coach Bell told me that he's a guy that he can play all 11 positions, honestly. So, Miles Graham is a special player.
He's a man among boys out there.
He is. Absolutely.
He's clearly the best player in this area, maybe, close in the state. What else can you tell us about does Santa Fe and Gainesville High play this week, or is it next week?
It's next week. I chuckle because those two teams are going to be playing for their first win. You're going to have two winless teams on Thursday night. Next Thursday at Citizens Field, Santa Fe will play at Gainesville. Santa Fe's only win last year was against Gainesville. So that game next week will be for both those teams. In fact, I put a poll question up on Twitter about that, which team will win their first game of the year, because those two teams play head-to-head next week.
Real quick, Kenny on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mellon Law, wants to know what's Wildwood doing this year.
The only thing I know about Wildwood is that they played Chiefland. Now, Wildwood was in the playoffs last year, Class 1R. Wildwood last year in the postseason got beat. They beat Williston in the first round, and then they lost to Hawthorne in the second round. So I don't know much about Wildwood other than the fact that they did lose to Chiefland. I know they played Orlando Christian Prep in their first game of the year and lost to them. I don't know anything about the team they beat last week, some team out of Winter Haven. But they've got Ocala Forest coming up this week. We might know a little bit more about Wildwood, but they've got Leesburg on the schedule. They got to go to the Villages. Calvary Christian is on the schedule. I don't know if they'll make the postseason this year. We'll see.
Last thing for you, Mike. RJ Beaird does a tremendous job, and Ocala just rolls people in that classification, or whatever the conference is they're playing now.
Yeah.
What
Sunshine
what
State
level,
Athletic Conference, but they changed it to SSAA. It's now, I think, an athletic association. They just changed it this year.
Has there been any talk? I mean, because they're a pretty good little football team, and I don't know what classification they would be playing if they went back to the FHSA. What would they be?
Probably 2A, or not 2A, but they would probably be playing. I don't know that they wouldn't be 1R, but they might be 2S maybe. I don't even know if they would be as high as 2S, because then you're talking about teams like Bradford and so forth. That's a good question. I don't even know if they would want to. They actually would probably be in Class 1S, because you got PK Young in 1S. I kind of see them more on that level. But you're right, football-wise, Shane. 70 points last week against Seven River Christian, which has been kind of a rivalry game, that game there against Seven Rivers, and they just crushed them 70-14. They've outscored their three opponents 147-27. I think I mentioned to you last week that they went undefeated and then went into the SSAC playoffs, got beat. I think it was the second round game they got beat. But then that team had to overturn it because of, I think, an ineligible player. So they actually finished undefeated last year. I think they're going to go undefeated this year. They got Bronson this week. They're going to blow out Bronson. That game will be a running clock easily. And then with Eagles View, Harvest Community, Cedar Creek Christian, maybe Masters Academy, because that's on the road in Oviedo. Maybe they could give them a little bit of a test. But I think Ocala in that division, I think they could win a state title this year.
Yep, I agree. Mike, great stuff as always. Let everybody know how they can check you out at the Prep Zone and Main Street Daily News.
Yep, big one for us coming up on radio. Tomorrow night I'll be on the call for Buchholz and Creekside out of St. Johns County. Buchholz off to a 3-0 start. Creekside, that was a 48-41 game last year, even though the score is a little indicative of the way it was played, because Buchholz had a big lead at the half. But there's no Creed Whittemore this year, and he had a huge game last year against Creekside. That went on 106.9 FM, 7 o'clock pregame, 7:30 kick. And then I mentioned the audio game of the week, South Sumter at Hawthorne. That game at 7:30, 7:15 pregame. You can listen to it at MainStreetDailyNews.com. You can find Marty Paulman's recap of that Santa Fe GHS volleyball match last night. You can find that at MainStreetDailyNews.com. And then also we got our new regional rankings coming out today at theprepzone.com.
Good stuff as always, my man. Appreciate your time, Mike. Take care, bud.
All right, you're welcome. Have a great day. Thank you, Shane.
Yep, that's Mike Ridaught. Does a tremendous job covering high school sports. This Day in Sports brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life with Campus USA Credit Union. In 1991, San Diego State freshman running back Marshall Falk. Oh, goodness, it went away here. Marshall Falk rushes for 386 yards and scores 7 touchdowns and beats Pacific 55-34. That's in 1991. This Day in Sports brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Hope y'all enjoyed today's program. Tomorrow we'll have JC. We'll do our Peachland Dental weekend picks and just talk Tennessee Vols. Appreciate you joining the program. Have a great day. Take care, folks.